Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!
Hello friends, today I'm back with another video from the flagship series, The Dirty Dozen. For those of you that have been here for a while, this was the video series that kicked off the channel and remains amongst my most popular content. Essentially, I work with a group of collaborators to come up with a scoring system that ranks the best characters in the game. We look at 6 different scoring criteria, player versus player, and each of the different guild raid bosses to come up with a score that ranks each of the characters in the game. The idea is to give you some perspective on the best performing characters at the end game in order to get the most out of your resources as you progress through. On top of that, I'll be doing the usual giveaway that I do with these videos and have to thank Snowprint for sponsoring this giveaway. This month we'll be giving away Calgar shards, 250 to the main winner, as well as 3 50 shard runner-up prizes. Comparing this video to the last Dirty Dozen in July, the main change is the arrival of the new Screamer Killer boss. Therefore, in addition to including the scores, I've also included some gameplay footage of strategies to use, so that you can all adapt and be successful. I've changed the collaborator lineup this time around, and I wanted to give thanks to Tawin, Archon, Legend, Waffles and Puntier for their help in this endeavour. We'll start by taking a look at the titled infographic, The Dirty Dozen, and walk you through each of the characters. Despite the arrival of Diamond 2, Eldrion's passive, Doom, still provides an unparalleled amount of value in this game. He is easily the best character in Tacticus and will remain there unless somehow nerfed. Following behind him is another Eldari, Moghan Ra, who is the best ranged damage dealer in the game. Moghan Ra really shines against the Screamer Killer boss because you can manipulate the boss movement and behaviour through intelligent play. Potentially, you may not have to move Moghan Ra at all for many of the rounds of combat. This lets you really increase his damage output through his passive ability and heavy weapon trait. In rank 3 we have Marneus Calgar, who is this month's giveaway character. Calgar performs his role as a damage buffer really well, and works his way into a lot of top Screamer Killer compositions due to his Mark 10 Gravis armor trait. This allows him to be exceptionally tanky as a frontline character, and allows you to pin down the boss effectively. Thaddeus Noble is in 4 and is a powerful ranged damage dealer with the highest raw damage stat for a ranged character in the game. He excels in the Screamer Killer fight because his damage allows you to kill the bodyguard Tyranid warriors. I'll go more into this later on, but these warriors are a must kill because of their synapse trait. If they are left alive, the Screamer Killer no longer has to follow instinctive behaviour and can wreak havoc on your forces. Revas does well due to the multi-hits through her passive ability, bringing her up to 9 hits per round. Her active is useful against some bosses, and in particular as a way of eliminating the Tyranid warriors on the Screamer Killer boss. I'll show you some footage of how this works later on. Bellator comes in at number 6 and is the best summoner in the game. His Gravis armor trait, similar to Calgar, makes him a superb tank, particularly against the Screamer Killer who does physical damage. With a strong enough Bellator, you can solo tank the entire fight, even at Legendary 4. Athena comes in at rank 7 as another damage buff character. She has great mobility and synergy with other Eldari, and is an attractive option to level up if you haven't yet unlocked legendary damage buffers like Calgar. Onshi is a workhorse across the board, and you can't really go too wrong with leveling him up. His greatest value comes from allowing a summoner like Bellator to create even more summons, making him incredibly useful against the original Tyranid bosses. His active just gives you a range of flexibility that can be useful in both raids and PvP modes. Shozil ranks at 9 and is a powerful and easy to access Tau character that does an okay job across all guild bosses. He rarely fits into the best compositions for every boss, but if you're looking for a reasonable all-rounder, then I would suggest him wholeheartedly. In rank 10 we have Yarrick, who is a flexible summoner that synergizes well with Onshi. Again, in a similar fashion to Sho, Yarrick is unlikely to make any of the best in slot compositions, but is a reasonable option that is available to players from the early game. Darkstrider has shot his way up the rankings this time around due to the Marker Light buff and the damage potential through his passive ability. It compares favourably to characters like Calgar and Athana, however is much narrower in that it only applies to ranged characters. In my gameplay footage I managed to get a 315,000 hit on the new legendary Screamer Killer boss using Darkstrider. I think Darkstrider is probably in the best in slot compositions for both Screamer Killer and Sarek, and would wholeheartedly recommend bringing him up. Finally, in position 12 we have Volk, another character who does well across the board but probably doesn't figure into the ultimate teams against any boss. a reasonable option as you're gearing up and working your way through the game. On this screen I've extended the rankings to the top 30 for your perusal, but I won't go into everything in great depth. I'll just touch briefly on a few things. There is a Psyker team out there. It works with Neurothrope, Abraxas, Eldryon as the core, and usually sees the addition of Thaddeus and another character. Ahriman obviously works well, as does Roswitha against Mortarion. It's a pretty narrow team though, because the Neurothrope has poor movement and is not usable against Tyranid guild bosses. Therefore I wouldn't suggest building this team until you've done other core characters. Sadly, Shadowsun only just makes it onto this list despite being the Tau legendary, and I know that a lot of you have messaged me to express your disappointment and ask for some changes to be made to her or her kit. Hopefully this comes in a future patch. Up next I have a series of gameplay videos where I show you some of the strategies against the Screamer Killer, both at max level and lower. First up is my hit with this Darkstrider composition. The key things to note here is the early clearing of the two Tyranid warriors, the first with Thaddeus and the second with Ra's Overwatch. This allows me to manipulate the boss position using its instinctive behavior trait. Bellator works really well here because of his Gravis armor and can single-handedly tank the boss. I've gone into a lot of depth on the Screamer Killer in my dedicated boss video, but remember that if you can get a character to the edge of the map, or with no usable hexes behind it, then the boss will only use his melee attack and not the living battering ram ability. This allows the rest of my team to stand around and hit the boss without interruption, really benefiting from things like Morgan Ra's passive. Now, not every map or situation will allow you to get a unit into the corner like this and manipulate the Screamer Killer AI. Having two characters in melee still achieves a similar objective, and Calgar works well alongside Bellator because of his Gravis armor trait. Essentially, by always having a character in melee, even after the living battering ram is used, the Screamer Killer will make a melee attack, leaving your squishier characters alive in the backline. Next up I have a run that was shared with me by Tauan that uses some weaker gold characters to good success against the legendary boss. The two previous videos both showed characters at Diamond 2, so I wanted to show some other options that might be more useful for players with lower tier characters. By Tauan's own admission, some of the later turn play could be better optimized, but the premise here is simple. You try and summon with Aleph Null on one of the Tyranid warriors to put Scarabs into melee range of the Screamer Killer straight away. Rayvas's Overwatch deals with the Tyranid warriors, and then it's a question of cycling your summons and sort of feeding them to the boss in order to leave your other characters alive. Now, it's not as powerful as the tanking with Gravis armor strategy, but gives you an idea of how you might cope with a lower gear team. Hopefully all of that was useful. If you'd like to support me and my content, please consider using the Refer a Friend code on screen. It goes a long way in allowing me to continue doing the work that I do. It's single use though, so choose who you support carefully. If you want to enter the Calgar giveaway, just leave a comment below and I'll randomly select the winners at the end of the month. Don't worry if you miss out, I run these sorts of giveaways regularly, and if you follow the channel you'll be notified straight away of any future ones. Finally, we're looking for a few competitive players to join us in the Eye of Terror cluster. If you're level 46 or above, please reach out to us via Discord link below and I'd love to play and strategize alongside you. Thanks, see you all soon, bye!
Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!